Hey everyone, Anthony Tharp again. I'm back. It's 2:01 p.m. As I said, I needed to share as much information as I could with you, especially with the Integrity Commission showing an interest in finally trying to get through this matter so we could have closure, because we're not getting it in the courts. And it's a shame that we have to pull the Integrity Commission in here, but that's what they're for. Corruption exists all over, and it's rampant in Jamaica. There are no questions. Our own experience and what we've shared with you should be enough to tell you you're not safe, or you won't be spared from it, because every decision these people in court make affects your life. All right, so one of the things I wanted to share, following the document we did before on Justice K. Anderson, who we outlined point for point orders he made that proves he knows exactly what was going on, and it wasn't kosher with the truth, and it was being deliberately done to harm us financially and otherwise. Because, as I said before in a previous video or yesterday, court proceedings are extremely stressful on litigants, especially when you know you're the victim. And it continues to be a serious handicap to you and the healthy lifestyle that you want to achieve. I speak personally from my perspective. And when this matter started in 2010, I didn't know it would be affecting me this adversely. Especially when you have attorneys who just come and take your money and tell you all kind of foolishness. You know how many attorneys I had that took your money and didn't do what they were supposed to do, and then they still come back for wanting more money when they mess up instead. When you're in a business and you're doing something, or you're performing a task for a client and you mess up as a professional, the traditional thing to do and the correct thing to do is to make amends and fix it without charging those people any additional money. In Jamaica, it's a different business. People come and screw up your business, mess up your business, then turn around and want to charge you again for them to come back and fix it. And it's not only in the courts, it's out in the general public, because, as I say, I deal with a lot of construction people, and it's a shame. People come and screw up the whole of your construction project and then expect to be paid to come back and fix it, when they should be fixing it without that. Do they understand I could have taken them, or you can take them to court to mess up your business? And to avoid that, you just, a lot of people close their eyes. The sad thing about it, though, is that Jamaicans tend to not let other people know these people are nefarious and don't know what they're doing. They're not professionals, and they cause damage to your property and to your finances and to your health, because they stress the hell out of you. But Jamaicans generally keep their mouth shut, or even some cases say, oh yeah, he's a mason. The man don't know nothing about building blocks, but he's a mason. Taking up a block and put it on top of there with some mortar is not being a mason. But that's what we have. And it's the same thing that goes on in the public domain, in the courts, all of that. We have people there that don't belong, and they're screwing up your life. So I'm just saying to you that based on my own experience, I never knew my blood pressure was topping off at extreme levels that humans shouldn't suffer. And as a result of that, I suffered catastrophically. I'm getting tongue-tied. I suffered health-wise. It was a catastrophe for my health, based on the pressure that I didn't know was so high. I wasn't monitoring it. I was on medication at the time. And it was only after I landed in the hospital, not once, not twice, 4 times, because of this matter. Because I have people in Jamaica, in the court, screwing with people's lives, and you don't realize they're helping to kill you. And those are the people now who sit up there and think, oh, when you criticize and you're not supposed to. When you provide evidence to law enforcement is not supposed to enforce it against them, because they walk around in a black robe and call themselves judge, or sit on some bench. These judges and attorneys have to be put in check. And if you're legitimate, if you're doing the right thing, you must agree that something has to be done. Whether you're a judge or not, whether you're an attorney or not, we need to clean the system. Because as it is affecting my life, my personal life, my family life, my finances, so it is affecting other persons these people are exposed to. The toxic. This is not just about being upset at what happened to us. It's about people who have gone beyond the pale of human. Anyway, let me cut that. I'm here to just quickly go to another document to prove that what's going on in the court is deliberately being done against us. And I indicated to you that Alexis Robinson showed up about that she owned, or she's represent owners of the property and Alexander Trust, Burnham Trust. And so they're using that as an excuse to slow down the process of us getting our damages in terms of property damage, in terms of property in terms of damages, sorry, because one doesn't have anything to do with the other. We won the case, we're supposed to have our damages paid, we can't get it done, and they keep playing around filing applications and claim after claim about they have an interest in the property. When again we pointed out that the Court of Appeal ruled on it, the Supreme Court ruled on it, and these justices like Justice Kirk Anderson and Justice B. Morrison have completely acted in contempt of that. So the things Alexis Robinson and John Graham are doing in court, they can't do it and get away with it without the aid and assistance of judges. So these judges are part and parcel of the problem. In fact, they are the main issue, because without them we wouldn't have had any problems. They couldn't have showed up at our property and offense property and claim it's theirs because they hear we're sick or dying, because they know they're going to run to some judge and try to get some bogus order to steal people's property. So we're not saying anything that should be pushed under the rug. And I want to remind people that when they did the tried to take over the corporation, and they went into the Florida Division of Corporation and filed fraudulent documents removing me as the receiving agent, then what we did, or what I did, I had another partner of mine take me off, and we contacted Division of Corporation Florida and provided them with the evidence that these people were committing fraud when they removed me. But instead of me going back, we appointed, or had the state appoint, Mr. William Ridgely. And I'm just going to read the affidavit he filed with the Supreme Court of Jamaica, that we took legal measures to correct the fraud at Capital One, John Graham, Alexis Robinson. Well, Alexis Robinson wasn't there originally, but she joined them in 2018. So when we filed this, after Alexis Robinson came and said she was representing our company and she was representing the owners of the company, which she didn't, we filed the corrective measures in the court, in Division of Corporations in Florida. Initially, we didn't bother ourselves about it because we wanted to preserve the evidence that they had took fraudulent action, and that is one. When they went in and changed the documents, that was fraudulent representation, and so we wanted to preserve it. But when they came into court and found judges like Justice Kirk Anderson and Justice B. Morrison, because we never know judges could be so brazen, when they came into court and found those two characters, then we realized that if we didn't watch what was happening, or we weren't really vigilant, these people could take our property, and not just take it, but complicate our lives. So by the time we finish straightening it out, they would have sold our property and disappeared with the money, the proceeds, which is what they tried. Because Alexis Robinson put up the property for sale for $1.5 billion and had contracts. And we found out and contacted the buyers and said, listen, we don't know about anything listed, but certainly our property is not for sale. And be aware of these people, because you pay them that $1.5 million, you don't have any property. And they skip town, because when Capital One control that $1.5 million, give John Graham and Alexis Robinson or the realtor commission or retainer fees or whatever they call it, it's not only illegal income, but when they skip town, you're going to be left without that $1.5 million. I don't know if you remember, there came a time when somebody sold Pier 1 in Montego Bay. And it was only after, I think, the property was transferred and all of that, that the owners found out. So crimes like that do happen. So we're not talking anything foreign or alien. So here's an affidavit of urgency from the registered agent of Business Ventures and Solutions Inc. to the Registrar of the Jamaica Supreme Court in support of striking of the fraudulent notice of withdrawal of damages due in the captioned matter. So remember, Alexis Robinson conspired with John Graham and Capital One to withdraw damages that belong to us, using Business Ventures and Solutions. So the now new registered agent, and I did it because they couldn't use me as an excuse. No, they couldn't use the fact that some corrupt judge and trustee in Florida sold my 100% interest in Business Ventures and Solutions Inc., which was bogus, of course. And I'll point to another document. We talked about it anyway before. I don't think I have to go through it again, but when they acquired my 100%, I didn't have 100%. Sorry, the sale was as is where is. They claim I didn't object to the sale or appeal the sale order. So they went ahead and told these people that they could close on the transaction. The trustee that should be representing my estate was paid $55,000 US. Supposed to be my estate. I haven't seen a dime of that money. That's a Michael Basque. Collected $55,000 US on my behalf, allegedly to settle the debts that I owed Capital One, which Capital One filed in the bankruptcy court of the Southern District of Florida, that I owed them $600,000. And so my trustee was going to settle the debt by collecting $55,000. You see that? Why would they pay $55,000 to settle a debt I owe them of $600,000? Now, if you do any kind of accounting or any kind of simple business, wouldn't they just deduct the money that's owed? Show the level of criminality that's involved and they take people for idiot. But those foreign agents of Capital One didn't care, because once they rip off the money, they figure we're in the Caribbean and the property's in the Caribbean, and so screw us. They would be untouchables. And they're untouchables because our local law enforcement agents refuse to prosecute. Now, if they're coming down here every year, every day to pick up people and carry back to the US and prosecute them for the same thing, scamming people out of their money, why aren't our law enforcement agency doing the same thing, especially in a high-profile case like this? We're talking about the 10th largest bank in the United States. We're talking about over $1 trillion, in fact, $2 to $4 trillion US in property damage and property. Why they're not pursuing it? Part of the crime too. That's criminal. So Mr. William Ridgely, and here again is the case number 2010 HCV 02692. The same case that's been dismissed, but the ones that Alexis Robinson keeps showing up. And as I said earlier in a previous video, when Justice K. Andis wrote those orders, at one point he said receiving parties, which was correct. But then he went to write another order and said defendant, which was incorrect, and made the order unenforceable and bogus, and a deliberate attempt to throw a monkey wrench in the system. Because here's the affidavit. And what it says there is damaged parties. So the damaged parties are the judgment creditors, the people who are owed money. And it says Capital One judgment debtor, the party who owes that money. And Capital One is the party that's been using its own employees to file multiple claims. They developed this routine, this system of when one matter is dismissed, they file another matter using an employee. Same thing repeated. Then go to these corrupt judges or judges who are irresponsible and don't do their jobs to get injunctions. Then they go back and get extensions on the injunction and keep running the matter and dragging it out at our expense, damaging our economics, damaging our relationships, damaging our health. And we don't seem to have even the concern of the Chief Justice. And to me, my observation is that John Graham and the rest of them had a run of the courthouse after Chief Justice came into his office. All of this fraud and corruption and trying to sell our property took place under Justice Sykes. So you tell me. Anyway, I am William Ridgely, reading the letter sent to the registrar that's on the court's records, and it was sent in June, on June 26, 2019, sorry. That's when it was filed. And again, if you look, you see 2019. And MOJ, the MOJ that you see there is the Minister of Justice. So here's the stamp for the court, the registrar, Supreme Court. Here's the acknowledgement that the Minister of Justice received it. So again, authenticated. We're not telling anybody any stories we made up. I, William Ridgely, being duly sworn, make oath and say as follows. 1. That for the purposes of this affidavit, my postal address is, and I want to read that out, in the state of Florida, USA. And I am a minister of religion. So here we have a minister of religion coming and filing this affidavit after he took possession as a registered agent for the company that these people fraudulently had taken out, and the Division of Corporation corrected it, and you'll see it from the body of the document here. I am a minister of religion, a United States Air Force veteran, a member of the damaged parties, and a legally registered agent pursuant to Florida state law, the Division of Corporation in the state of Florida, USA. That I have been appointed as a registered agent for Business Ventures and Solutions, Inc. That I am submitting this affidavit in my corporate capacity as a registered agent. That I am one of the development partners who has been damaged by the actions taken by Capital One NA because of the failure of the Supreme Court of Jamaica to protect me and my property from ongoing as well as further damages as a direct result of the Supreme Court's flipping here. And he says negligence and complicity or complacency in how the matter has been handled. No, let me repeat that. Complicity in how the handling of the assessment of damages process has been conducted. I firmly believe the Supreme Court of Jamaica must take full responsibility and corrective action to protect me and my development partners from further damage by granting the order for the amount of damages submitted as due and as the damaged parties, an amount that has been calculated in keeping with the final judgment of the Honorable Mrs. Justice Beswick, handed down on the 29th of May 2015, a judgment which was clarified by Justice Beswick in December of 2015, that I certify that Anthony Tharpe and any attorneys retained by Anthony Tharpe, including Charles Johnson, are the authorized representatives handling the captioned matter as it related to property and damages in the Supreme Court of Jamaica. Remember, I told you that the damaged parties, the other parties, we retained an attorney that was in front of Justice Morrison, who said no one hear nothing from us or from him. That I was made aware that an attempt was made to defraud me and all the damaged parties, as well as other development partners, of damages due as a result of the injunction issued to Capital One NA by the Supreme Court in July of 2012, a 9-year injunction supported by an undertaking for all damages done and due issued to the Supreme Court from Capital One NA. That this affidavit is to certify that the Florida Division of Corporation has been notified of the fraud, that the Florida Division of Corporation has corrected the records to identify the rightful and legal registered agent and the true directors of Business Ventures and Solutions Inc. as reflected by the attached certificate, to reflect that Capital One NA and the Alexander Burnham Trust are not authorized, nor do they have any legal ownership interest in Business Ventures and Solutions Inc., the damaged parties, the damages, or any property which would legally allow either of them to withdraw damages due to damaged parties. So here again, that the Florida Division of Corporation has corrected the records to identify the rightful and legal registered agent. So again, the things I've been saying, all of that is in front of the court. All of this was in front of Justice Morrison, Justice Kirk Anderson, and all the subsequent justices who have deliberately ignored previous rulings of the court, affidavits from persons who own property. And I'll remind you that after this was done and it was sent to the registrar and it came up into court, what did Alexis Robinson, John Graham, in association with Capital One, their U.S. attorneys did? They now went and filed fraudulent documents closing down Business Ventures and Solutions of Florida. Of course, that wouldn't have affected us and the damages anyway. In fact, it worked in our favor. But they did that and then went and reinstated a Business Ventures and Solutions Inc. in New York that was administratively dissolved, that was owned by me. So because it was owned by me but was administratively dissolved, they did that and then claim it was the same corporation or corporate entity, came back to this jurisdiction, Jamaica, and entered court with it. And despite the time, many times we've pointed that out to judges, they ignore it because they have ulterior motives. Because as we've said before, and I repeat, everybody that's hearing me or watching this video knows that the United States is a group of independent states that came together, formed a republic of independent states, meaning each of them have their own governments, each of them make their own laws, and if you're doing business in one legally, you have to register independently. And if you move your corporate entity to another state, you have to register in that state independently of what you registered in the state of Florida or New York. So in short, it's legally 3 different businesses or franchises. Jamaica judges who've this been exposed to pretend they don't know what's going on. And when it did come up in front of Justice G. Brown, Justice G. Brown ruled that those orders from a U.S. court or jurisdiction are unenforceable in Jamaica against Anthony Tharpe or anybody, as a matter of fact, because of the sovereignty, because there are no concurrency of jurisdiction. They don't have any agreements for judges or court. Plus, It would violate our constitutional rights, our independence and sovereignty. And I'm saying that because knowing those things exist and are in place, these same judges, Kirk Anderson, B. Morrison of the Supreme Court, Justice Brian Sykes, Justice Mason, Justice Nemhard, all of them ignored all of that and made rules favorable to Capital One, Alexander Burnham Trust, Alexis Robinson, and John Graham. After all that I'm saying, here's the evidence now that the registered agent filed a document with the registrar of the Supreme Court, which is on record, from 2019. And the registrar and everybody down here pretending they don't know anything about what we're doing and don't set dates for damages to be heard when we are the rightful owners of the property and damage. It was filed on June 26, 2019. It was served on the Minister of Justice, signed by R. Samuels on the 1st of the 7th, 2019. 01/07/019. I think that's July 1, 2019. So the Minister of Justice knows all about this as well. They keep them out shut. And the Integrity Commission must not ignore all of that, because they must ask of Miss or Mr. R. Samuels, and I think it was a young lady. They must ask her, or whosoever she delivered it to. And when it was filed, she said they were going to take it up to the Minister of Justice's office. We filed a similar thing with the what you call them again? The Commissioner of Police office. And we're still here talking. Alright, so just in concluding this, and just to reinforce what we're saying, that I nor any of the damaged parties have instructed another party, especially Capital One NA, the Alexander Burnham Trust, John Graham, or any associated law firm retained by those parties to withdraw any damages due. I submit that it is a matter of extreme urgency that the order for the amount of damages calculated and filed in the court's records be signed as early as is possible, especially in light of the fact that the claim matter has ended since the 29th of May 2015. The requested order, if not granted and signed at the earliest date possible, will prevent the matter in front of the court from being dealt with expeditiously and will continue to cause further economic damages as well as further prejudice the damaged parties. That I fear if the order for damages is not signed as a matter of urgency, the damaged parties will not be able to obtain justifiable relief through the courts. The overriding objectives of the CPR, the Civil Procedure Rules, that means, will be met if the order is signed as early as possible. Signed and notarized by Eric J. Cordova, yes. Public Notary, State of Florida. Commission number GG001235. And I'll let you have that. So again, these are legal documents that's in front of the court, have been in front of the court, have been in front of all these judges that are making these really horrific rulings, and Anthony Tharp and his partners are still here struggling to get our matters done and settled, and being treated with the most offensive way by these judges who continue to do harm to us. Now, we filed a claim against these persons, as you can see, and it was a claim for conspiracy. The conspiracy that's detailed in the letters that we provided, the rulings that we showed you in the court, these people working together, because a conspiracy exists where one or two people, not one, two or more people work together to achieve a certain objective, normally an illegal objective. In this case, thieving people property and land, our property and land. So we filed a claim against the attorneys. Here, we didn't go after the U.S. attorneys because we didn't want to complicate serving and having to go file for serving out of jurisdiction. So in attempting to stop the crime from being committed, we filed complaints against the attorneys. And don't you know, after we provided all the evidence, including the ones we're showing you now, and further and more detailed evidence that these people were committing all these crimes and they violated the Law Reform Fraudulent Transaction Act, don't you know the judge said the actions they were taking basically was not conspiracy? You figure that. So yeah, we did file a complaint, SU 2019 CV 04009 in the Supreme Court of Jamaica. And the parties are between Anthony Tharp, applicant or appellant, applicant. The successors in interest are Business Ventures and Solutions, Inc. All damaged parties, judgment creditors. And defendants, Alexis Robinson, Myers Fletcher and Gordon, John Graham and Company, I repeated that, Suzette Spence and Nicola Della Pena, Joachim Fitzhenry, and all named and unnamed parties with interest. So we filed against them because they kept refiling these things in court illegally because it violated the Law Reform Fraudulent Transaction Act. They were deceptive. They were committing fraud. They were claiming property that they know didn't belong to them. They're walking into court brazenly, parading in front of judges, and the judges would just ignore us and allow them to proceed. Now remember, even in the case of Charles Johnson, the attorney in front of Justice Morrison, we have an attorney there, and he just ignored it. Say, well, he didn't want to hear anything from us. So that was filed, and there are a number of documents that were filed in there, including a laundry list of fraudulent action that took place by these guys, and the court ignored it. It was in front of a judge, as I said, and she said this isn't fraud. So one of the things, I'm going to list some of the things they filed, conspired and filed, and some of them they filed in the US, as I said, and then came back to this jurisdiction with so-called orders which the court rule couldn't be enforced, and yet we're still having this conversation. And again, the Integrity Commission and the Fraud Squad, MOCA, I think, who investigate fraud amongst police and other government agencies, must step in here. The Fraud Squad. One, it says, complaint about Capital One NA involved in a conspiracy and scheme to defraud me, Anthony Tharp, and my joint venture partners of over $1 trillion using Jamaican agents, a US trustee, a US bankruptcy court, and at least 2 judges in the Supreme Court of Jamaica. And there was a bankruptcy court judge, Paul G. Hyman, who facilitated the so-called sale of my interest in Business Ventures and Solutions. And one of the things he did in that transaction, as I said, trying to scam somebody, he actually put in the order that the sale was not contingent on any guarantees, pretty much. So what they did, they ripped off Capital One, took $55,000. Don't know if they shared it or they went out and had drinks, don't know. Not making that allegation, but certainly they wouldn't do it for their good health, or this guy was just prejudiced against me because he was the one that threatened about he was going to get me picked up by U.S. Marshals and detained for a length of time until I submitted and didn't file this. I went there with my passport and said, you don't have any authorization or jurisdiction. He wasn't there when I did that. It was another judge to enforce any kind of order, and Justice G. Brown enforced that here in Jamaica. Capital One NA filed a false fraudulent claim in case number, and the petition number is 17-12129 in the United States Bankruptcy Court, Southern District of Florida. So that's a petition I filed to stop them from doing illegal collections, which should have stopped them in their tracks. But because of the trustee and this judge, they ignored the law. And again, it's a 5-year term for filing a fraudulent claim. And I don't remember how much, $1,000 in fines. This fraudulent claim filing is in violation of 879 bankruptcy fraud. Title or violation of the statute. And the statute is 879 bankruptcy fraud, Title 18 USC, subsection 152 and 157. So they recited the law that even that's in illegal. So I'll read that again, so if you want to look it up for yourself. So under Title 18 USC, so just put in your browser bankruptcy fraud on the 879 bankruptcy fraud / Title 18 USC section 152 or 157, and that would break down the illegality of what they did and the fraud. After filing 2 fraudulent claims in the bankruptcy petition, Capital One, now alleging it was a creditor for the bankruptcy estate of Anthony Tharpe, used that status of being creditor to defraud the petitioner Anthony Tharpe of his other joint venture partners and money projected to be in excess of between $1 to $4 trillion US dollars. This was also filed in the bankruptcy court of the US. Capital One NA, and when I filed it, by the way, all of a sudden the trustee was like, he's a trustee, so he has to file, and so he chose not to file it. You see the criminality. Capital One NA used a New York-based Alexander Burnham Trust to file one of the fraudulent claims, and filed the other under its own name. Capital One NA took these actions in an attempt to defraud Anthony Tharpe, the petitioner, and his partners of property and an award of damages handed down by the Supreme Court of Jamaica after Capital One filed a claim against the petitioner and issued an undertaking for damages to the Supreme Court in exchange for an injunction against the petitioner and his partners developing several mega resort real estate developments franchised across the island of Jamaica, Central America, and the USA. Yeah, we're looking at doing projects in Central America and in the USA as well. So, the petitioner is a resident of the state of Florida, and his partners are legally resident American citizens stretching from New York, Florida to the Midwest. The conspiracy to defraud these individuals and corporations stretch across 4 states: New York, Florida, Texas, Virginia, and the island of Jamaica. Based on evidence, there are at least 10 individuals involved domiciled in Florida, Virginia, and New York, as well as the island of Jamaica, who have engaged in this conspiracy. Based on the evidence, again, there are at least 10 individuals. And so I don't know how a judge could say there is no conspiracy when you have 10 individuals working the program to defraud people of their property. The conspiracy to defraud these, I read that already. Amongst the individuals who conspired with Capital One to effect the fraud against the petitioner and his joint venture partners are at least 4 lawyers on the island of Jamaica, a trustee from the bankruptcy trustee office in the Southern District of Florida. At least one judge here in the bankruptcy court of the Southern District of Florida, and as many as 3 judges on the island of Jamaica. Evidence and documentation evidencing the fraud has been filed with the bankruptcy court of the Southern District of Florida, the Jamaica Commissioner of Police, the Jamaica Chief Justice, the Jamaica Integrity Commission, and the Jamaica General Legal Counsel. So as I said to you before, we filed another complaint with the Integrity Commission, and this is stating that it was filed, and this was filed in February 22, 2021. So obviously it was filed before the current one in front of them. So we've asked them to tell us what's happening with that. Evidence and documentation evidencing the fraud has been filed with the bankruptcy court of the Southern District of Florida, the Jamaica Commissioner of Police, the Jamaica Chief Justice, the Jamaica Integrity Commission, and the Jamaica General Legal Counsel. Those agencies have claimed they have been investigating or are to investigate with absolutely no results, even though the evidence is clearly in front of the court. And these are evidence that went in front of the justice, who said there was no conspiracy. The fraud has also been reported to the FBI, the U.S. Trustee's Office in both Florida and Atlanta, Georgia, the Financial Consumer Protection Bureau, the Chief Judge of the Bankruptcy Court in the Southern District of Florida, with absolutely no action whatsoever. So everybody is playing mum. The Florida Division of Corporation lie. The trustees of, let me say, the finance, we got the state attorney of in Washington to refer to it, to the Financial Consumer Protection Bureau, who called us and sent a letter to Capital One to say what's going on. Capital One said they don't know anything about it. Alright, so again, another lie which would fall under our prosecutable the Law Reform Fraudulent Transaction Act, which our jurisdiction has authority under that act to prosecute these people, these very people who are up here lying. Capital One. The Florida Division of Corporation has directed that the matter be filed with local law enforcement, as they do not have a fraud division. So here again, we reported it to Florida. Florida directed us to report it to law enforcement because they're aware of it. So again, we're not telling anything that's not true. It became necessary to file a report with the Florida Division of Corporation because Capital One NA, after filing the fraudulent claim, proceeded to use those filings to allege that they acquired 100% of the petitioner's interest in an administratively dissolved New York corporation, also administratively dissolved in the state of Florida from the year 2007. However, even though there was undisputed facts and evidence that the petitioner did not and has not owned 100% of that corporate entity before the court for over a decade, the court made orders to sell the 100% interest. That's a reference to my trustee Michael Bask and the judge Hyman, and that order to detain me and that I couldn't represent my own company. Problem for that order and alleged sale was that the property which was being defrauded had already been assigned and transferred long before the actual order and sale. That did not stop Capital One from fraudulently misrepresenting in filings with the Division of Corporation that they owned the corporation and proceeded to file amendments to the corporate documents replacing the petitioner as a registered agent for the corporation. Capital One NA filed in the official records suggested that the board of directors had made a resolution and voted to replace Anthony Tharp, the registered agent. This is yet another fraudulent act because while they removed the petitioner as the registered agent, Capital One NA could not replace the directors. None of the directors who are amongst the parties that Capital One defrauded voted any resolution to change the registered agent. I have left the change in place, or the change has been left in place, so that law enforcement can witness it for themselves. Capital One NA then took the fraudulent changes made to the corporate documents, and filed it in the Jamaica courts that the petitioner and the owners of the administrative dissolved corporation have withdrawn their rights to damages owed to them by Capital One NA. So that the defrauding investors of over trillions of dollars. This action amounts to defrauding owners of the damages and the other property of money in excess of trillions of dollars, and it's certified and signed by Anthony Tharp. So again, ending this quickly, we have affidavit after affidavit proving what we're saying, that the registrar of the court was notified. The Chief Justice, this is a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, March 29, 2019. That was a follow-up. Then the June 26, 2019 affidavit of Mr. William Ridgely, which would also support what I just read. And then documents filed 2020, where, I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of evidence that's in front of us. And here are the fraudulent claims they filed in the bankruptcy court. This is one of them. You can make it out, hopefully. Yeah, so that's the claim, the illegal claim they filed in the bankruptcy court. Saying that one is saying the 600, and here, let me show you that. No lies on our part. Hopefully you can see that 600,000 that it says owed. Can you see it? It's there someplace. Let me see. Yeah, right there. That's what they said. The Jamaica courts had ruled, and I owe them that $600,000, which of course is fraudulent and lie, which again points to the Integrity Commission and the police commissioner and all those people. Here's where they try to sell the property in question. Illegally sold for $1.5 million. Now, if they're truly owed $600,000, how would they legally be able to sell my property for $600,000? I mean, for $1.5 million and keep the money? Here's the realtor. We're still trying to find out to serve her. You know, she refused to take our advice to withdraw and see the 1.5. She refused to take our advice, telling us that we have to speak to Alexis Robinson. So again, I'm going to end it there, because I just wanted you to get a glimpse of everything we're saying to you is factual. It's available in the public records, and we are the victims, and we can't get the justice we deserve. And in reality, as I said, everybody is screaming about what's going on at SSL, and rightly so. And they're talking about, I think I saw where on some report they said the amount that's been stolen or missing is about 40-something million US dollars. I won't try to do the maths here, but you get to your calculator. Try and subtract $40 million US from $4 trillion US dollars. And even if we were to get 50% of that, well, I mean, we did the calculations. Let's say $1 billion, $10 billion. Take away 40 million from that and see how much damage has been done to us. Who's screaming it? Which law enforcement agency is out there? Which newspaper is out there covering it? Who? They're running for shelter, saying they're either scared to publish it or their attorneys. And you know who tell him not to publish it? The same attorneys that we're telling you to be careful of. Because why would an attorney tell a newspaper not to publish the truth? You can't be sued for publishing the truth. But they're telling us their attorneys advise them that they mustn't publish this. Why? Because it's exposing them, and they have this cliquing. Protect the same, cruff them or rip off people. And these attorneys are being facilitated by a newspaper refusing to publish the truth and the evidence that could save this country and its people from further harm and damage from scamsters, from criminals who operate in the court system and in the law enforcement and other areas. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. And again, let's make a serious effort to fix our problems by ourselves, because that's the only way we're going to truly remain the kind of Jamaicans I grew up with. Strong, honest, law-abiding, hard-working, smart-working people, recognized around the world as among some of the most astute people. Alright, thank you. Have a good one. And looking forward to persons that hear this, for you to subscribe, share, and click the like button. And those persons who have made comments, if I haven't responded when you made a comment, don't worry, I'm going to respond. It's just I've been running to try take advantage of time so that we can get this thing resolved as quickly as possible, because we want to have the opportunity to really complete those projects. We want to be able to go in and build that 125-story skyscraper in Montego Bay. Not one, but 3 towers. We want to build that 14 million square feet retail, commercial, business center in Montego Bay with 19,000 parking spaces in Montego Bay. So we're not contributing to traffic. The people will be buying these units or renting these units will be bringing in money to be spent in Jamaica, because we're not hoarding them on campus. We've structured our operations to incorporate the retail centers so that local merchants, local businesses can go in there and have tourists coming downstairs from that 125-story tower, going in there and spending the dollars and cents, so that money circulates within the Jamaican economy and not behind some fence in a gated all-inclusive resort where the money goes straight out of Jamaica. We have a major development on 300 acres in Clarendon that's been put on hold by a most ridiculous ruling that we're waiting for the appeals court to resolve. And depending on if it's resolved or not, currently that ruling makes it illegal for you to be even paying banks your mortgage if you bought your home from a real estate developer that didn't have a development license. And again, a developer typically didn't need a development license, but Justice made that ruling. So that's what Jamaica is facing. How are we going to develop if we have persons in court that make decisions without really thinking about the consequences or the law? And if you don't know, go do the research like everybody else before you make a decision. A judge is not expected to know everything, but a judge is expected to take the time to do the research so that they can make objective, educated decisions, and not make decisions merely because an attorney comes into court and says this is how this should go. Thank you. Have a good one. Please subscribe. Please, let's work together. Oh, and by the way, my company that was doing the development had made a commitment to the people of this country on documentation that we would also contribute 25% of our profits from the operations of these enterprises to education on the island. So you tell me, are we okay with a few people that we just named? In fact, the document says 10 people. 4 of them or 5 of them from Jamaica. So 5 people from Jamaica who should have the interests of Jamaica, selling out Jamaica. For what? I don't know. I don't know what they could be getting. But certainly they're undermining the quality of life of the very country that they claim they live in. They plan on running away, maybe, I don't know. But for the rest of those 3.5 or 4 million Jamaicans that's here, or those 3 million in the diaspora that has this island interest at heart, this is what we face, and this is why I'm asking you to stand up, subscribe. Let's fight this issue. Let's fix it. Let's clean out these areas of corruption and people who are corrupt. We have no reason to keep them there. They're costing us, they're killing us, they're damaging us and our future and our children's future. Have a great afternoon.